Three common problems when you transition, and I would like for you to expect them, get ready for them, and learn how you deal with them so that you are not surprised when that happens. Hi everyone, my name is Isela Bonova. I'm a life coach for transitioning humanitarians, helping humanitarians transition to the private sector, to being their own boss, and of course, transitioning within the humanitarian sector. Before I go on to talking about common problems that every humanitarian face when they transition, I faced so many times myself and continue facing. We need to realize that we can no longer be surprised at what problems we will need to be solving if we transition and what problems we'll need to be solving if we stay where we are. Because we'll be solving problems either way. And as long as we are alive, probably that will continue being true. So that's why instead of thinking that, oh my God, if I didn't transition, I wouldn't have faced these problems, which is a lie. I think it's important for us to really get clear for ourselves as to if I stay in the humanitarian sector, these are the set of problems I will be solving. If I go to the thing that I want to do, these are the set of problems I will be solving. By the way, I almost forgot to tell you all the thank you for you sending me all of your amazing supportive messages about my mom. I truly, truly appreciate all of this. I haven't been able to respond to messages, but I will. And in these difficult times, as my mom struggles through cancer, I had such difficult time sitting next to her and seeing her suffer. So that's why I'm here working and concentrating a bit on other things so that I don't get mad. And that's here I am. Okay, so I thought that I would talk about these three common problems that I will guarantee, if anything I can guarantee, is these problems that you are likely to face, and similar or different set of problems if you stay in the humanitarian sector, right? So the problems that you're likely to face if you transition to private sector to another part of the humanitarian sector, or maybe to being your own boss, the main problem that you'll be facing is the fear and confusion generated problems. I will talk about what they look like, and probably you already know what they look like. The second set of problems that you'll be facing is your brain freaking out about failures and giving up. These are the set of problems that you'll be facing. And the third set of problems coming from resistance or pressure. These are the set of problems you'll be solving. So the question never is, I hope I will not face any problem. The question always is, how am I going to solve them while keep going for what I want? Or what am I willing to do to solve them? Or I'm willing to solve problems if I stay, rather I stay in the humanitarian sector, right? Because as I said, whether we go to the like we stay in the humanitarian sector or we go to another setting, we will face these problems anyway, or different set of problems. So let's start with fear and confusion generated problems. And they are, I think, the common problems that we'll all face, such as we will be doubting about whether this will work. We will be doubting about whether our dreams and goals are even realistic. We will be very confused about what we want and what we don't want. Maybe we'll be more sure about what we don't want, which is amazing, but we'll be very confused about what we want, or we'll be afraid if the things that we want will work, therefore confusion continues being prevalent, right? And the fear will be also generating a lot of other emotions of anxiety, doubt, frustration, and therefore we'll keep feeling like, okay, this is not going to work, and keep relying or focusing on the worst case scenarios, rather than making things work, right? So fear and confusion, I think, is the most common problem that we'll all face when we are transitioning. And what the consequence of that problems are, especially if we don't solve them, are that we will continue delaying the process, we will continue prolonging the suffering, and we'll continue not arriving where we want to arrive. So, therefore, we need to start recognizing how these are very normal set of problems, and most importantly, we are capable of solving them no matter what happens. Now, the part about how do we know how to solve comes from feeling confidence that we have been solving those type of problems before, and now we are able to do that again. We just haven't been maybe conscious about how to do that in the past, and now we need to get clear as to how to do that, right? So that's why think of all the ways that you have solved fears before. Think of all the ways that you have solved confusion before, but I think what's interesting is that we don't often tend to recognize that we are having this feeling of confusion or doubts or second guessing that is really stemming from the fact that we're not trusting ourselves to be able to solve them. And that's why it's such a vicious cycle that we keep on the one hand fearing these worst case scenarios. On the other hand, we keep also saying that we're not capable of solving them, and therefore likelihood of us prolonging that suffering is very great. So there are, like, I would, if anything that you can take from this video is you can solve any fear that comes your way, especially if it's emotional fear. I'm not talking about physical fear, right? Physical fear of bear chasing us, obviously we can't do anything about it. We need to follow our uh, survival instinct on that. But when it comes to emotional fear, notice that you know or you are capable of solving them. You just haven't done this probably consciously a lot of the times, even though at work, probably you have done it many times. So, one way of solving fear is obviously recognizing and feeling them through, right? So that you start seeing that, okay, this is fear. It has nothing to do about whether I'm capable of doing the thing that I want or not. It is just warning me as to whether I'm sure or how I can be careful doing it. That's amazing, right? That's the fear's job, is to protect us. So that's what exactly it's doing, its job. So therefore, feeling and recognizing and feeling and allowing to go through your body will make our body get used to that we are able to solve it, or we're able to handle it without freaking out and without freezing or without stopping. We can just keep going, right? So that's why one way of solving it is feeling, recognizing and feeling it. Another way of solving fear is understanding what it is saying, right? What is the fear is saying? Fear, I believe that fear usually never says stop doing it or don't do it. Fear usually says be careful. Are you sure? These are the things that fear says through doubts, through second guessing. This is what fear says. But oftentimes, what we end up doing is we interpret fear to mean that it's saying don't do it, right? So that's the second option, is to understand what fear is saying and handling it accordingly without making it drastic means like, oh, that means I should stop doing it, right? Uh, the third way of dealing with fear is keep doing this as the fear keeps happening anyway. So in other words, you keep giving space to fear, it acts out the way it does, there is no problem, and keep doing the things that gets you to the goal anyway, right? And that's what I have done a lot of the times that got me to where I am today. So instead of like keep entertaining fear, keep focusing on the fear, keep making it like sound, oh my God, this is horrible, this is bad, and all of those things. Instead, what I really do is I keep recognizing it, and then I keep continuing doing these things anyway, pursuing what I want anyway, right? So that's another way to do it. Now, when it comes to confusion, is confusion really comes from feeling like you don't have options, or feeling you don't know which ones to choose from, or fearing that none of them will work, essentially, right? That's what confusion is about. Confusion, when we are confused, what we're really saying is, I don't know, um, how to find the answer to my question, right? That's what confusion is really about. And oh no, my battery is running out. Hold on, I need to get my batteries. Okay, I will be with you very soon. Okay, I'm working in field conditions, you all, just like all the humanitarians in the field. Okay, so confusion is when you're confused, what you're really saying is, I don't know what the answer is or what the decision is, as if to say someone else knows the answer. But no one else can know the answer except yourself, right? So therefore, confusion is usually coming from, I have never met people who didn't genuinely know um, how to move forward. They knew what they would like to, they knew where they would like to go, but they were unwilling to choose that route because of, again, fear of making a mistake, because of fearing that the road will not take them to what they want and they will be wasting their time. And that's why they stay confused. So that's why the way that you solve confusion is, if you really believed you are capable of making any road work, which one would you take? Right? If you really believe that you could make any road work, any transition outcome work, which one would you take? And the more you start seeing and feeling that confidence and trust, the more you're able to do something with it. And the confusion will stop on its own, it will dissipate. Because fear and confusion, what they're really asking for is assurance, right? Assurance from you, assurance from others that the thing that you're doing is right, or the thing that you're doing is not crazy, or the thing that you're doing or wanting to go for will work out eventually. That's what the confusion is all about. So that's why, instead of staying in confusion, what I would like for you to notice is, okay, I'm noticing myself feel confused. Like the way that you can observe, you start seeing that, okay, I'm observing myself feel very confused. And the reasons why I'm confused about is because I'm believing that someone else knows the answer. I'm believing that whatever the answer I choose will not work. Now let me get questioning as to, why do I believe that? Why do I believe that this road will not work, this road will not work? Because as long as you haven't tried it out, you will not know it will work or not, right? Now, if you are asking for assurances, now what kind of assurance you're asking for, and who you're asking for, or who you're asking from? Because again, no one can give you assurance except yourself. And sometimes my clients will tell me that, well, I would like you to give me assurance. And I'm like, absolutely, let me give you an assurance, but why is my opinion and assurance has carry more weight than yours? And this also comes back to, again, you not learning to trust your own opinion, your own uh, judgments, and therefore wanting to bring the, or give the responsibility, outsource the responsibility to someone else. Again, notice, why do you want to outsource the responsibility to someone else, right? Because it just feels fearful, it just feels scary. And again, that's very normal. So that's why fear and confusion are, I would say, the biggest problems that you will be facing. And also noticing that you are the person who's capable of solving them and no one else. The more and the faster you recognize it, the faster you stop the suffering, the faster you move on, the faster you make decision, and the faster you see and find out the outcomes, and then the faster you course correct, and the faster you keep going. because in my transitioning, fear and confusion probably took up at least 8 months of my life that I could have spent on anything else. But because I was so in it and I didn't even recognize it, and I didn't even, excuse me, I didn't even notice that this was happening until a coach of mine told me that, Estelle, it seems like you keep waiting for answers somewhere else when you are the one who needs to be giving yourself the answers, right? And I'm like, oh my God, that's true. I was asking everyone for answers except myself, or I wasn't trusting my answers. Second problem is the failure and giving up. And this is, I think, the something that people tell me all the time as to how um, they're afraid of failing, right? Fear of failure is, I think, the biggest reason why many people don't transition or don't even start or continue status quo, because they just feel like they're not able to handle failure. And fear of failure is also the reason why we're likely to give up on the things that we want to, especially when things don't go the way that we want to, right? So therefore, fear of failure might be like, the way that I have seen as fear of failure is fear of failing in advance, which is you haven't even done anything towards your transitioning, but you keep telling yourself that you are afraid, and that's failing in itself as well, right? You keep status quo even though that's not what you like is also a failure in itself, but we don't recognize it as a failure because we haven't really went to the uncertainty yet. And because we haven't gotten to the uncertainty yet, uncertainty of going to another field, uncertainty of not knowing if this will work, because of that, we don't really label things as failure. But if we're not living the life we want to, that is a failure, right? But then again, depends on how you label failure as well. I mean, I have stopped labeling things as failure anymore because it just has such a emotional toll on my brain. So that's why I am very careful what to label as failure. So what I notice about failure is that failure really depends on how you define them. So there is the failure in advance and then the failure during the process. Whatever your definition of that failure is, your brain will likely to make this such a problem. But I think the more people are talking about how failure is not only part of the process, but it's supposed to be that way, right? It's like it's absolutely necessary for us to get to where we want to, just the way that we did when we were in the humanitarian sector. When we were in the humanitarian sector, I don't think that we went through sailing and beautifully rising to the occasion. I don't think that happened, right? I believe that we failed so many times. But because it was in the certainty, so to say, of the humanitarian sector, we were willing to tolerate that failure, right? We were willing to tolerate the failure of not being able to write the report well, or not being able to do the presentation well, whatever the other failures that we had along the way, we were fine handling them because it was within the confinement of certainty, so to say, within the job environment. Therefore, we didn't really see this as a failure. But when it comes to uncertainty to going somewhere else, that sense of failure will heighten even more. And because it heightens even more, we get so hung up on keep being vigilant about when we're going to fail, or keep feeling, keep doing safe options, or keep doing safe actions, meaning that we don't do the things that makes us feel bad, and therefore we just keep failing anyway. And again, failure or fear of failure also has a great potential to keep prolonging the suffering, to keep prolonging not getting what we want to, and then keep feeling even more frustrated, which will increase the likelihood of giving up, and that is again becomes a failure, or we will label it as failure. And then we will have all, like, we will have added up all of the evidence to to tell ourselves that now we're not able to handle it, now we're failure, now we're this, now we're that, right? And therefore we just feel so bad about ourselves. And that's why my goal is to not let you keep staying in that suffering state, and reducing that suffering as much as possible by recognizing that A, you are the one labeling what is failure and what is not. B, you are the one who then decides whether you need to be suffering because of it for a long time, or you can overcome this faster as possible. I was talking to a nephew of mine, and he was telling me that when he plays football and then he fails, meaning they lose the game, then he suffers for 15 days, he said. And I was like, okay, why 15 days? And he was like, I don't know, it just feels a long time, right? Now I was telling him that, but if he keeps playing like one game after the other, how does he manage um, keep staying in this failure mood for 15 days? And he says, well, that's why I'm not playing the big games. And that's the problem, right? Especially for him, but also many of us who just feels like if we are staying in the suffering mode for a long time, then it will become so difficult for us to recover because we have reinforced our feeling of failure even more. And because we have reinforced it so much and we have now made it so much of a problem, now we're not even willing to go and try it again because we have traumatized ourselves to a point that we now keep looking at what is a safe option and just keep for the safe option, even though the desires that we have are so much different than what we want to. So that's why I just feel like failure tolerance needs to be proportionate to the dream that we have, right? So if the dream is, I don't know, we want to make 100K or we want to make 200K based on whatever the previous salaries we had or previous aspirations that we had, and we want to replicate that, then the tolerance of failure needs to be that high as well, because otherwise we will continue staying in the indulgence of failing or having failed and have feeling bad about ourselves so much and for a long time that we will continue traumatizing ourselves, and therefore we will not move forward, and therefore we keep telling ourselves how the goal that we wanted was not supposed to be ours anyway. We were right about how we were going to fail, and then it becomes just such a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So that's why, as I said, you decide what the failure should look like or what the definition of is. You also decide how long this failure feeling stays within you. And my suggestion would be the faster you process it, all of the emotions, the faster you go through it. And the third part is the more you expect and make it normal part of the transitioning, the more you start realizing that there is nothing to be scared about. And in fact, everyone who you meet, especially in the entrepreneur world, failure is supposed to be even something that you gather as a honor badge in some way for how fast you can grow your business, how fast you can grow your journey. Because otherwise, the more you keep staying in the fear of it, the more you are failing and the more you are not able to get to what you want to, right? And my suggestion is normalize failure as much as possible, depending on what your definition of failure is. As I also said, that I don't label anything failure anymore because of the psychological impact it has on my brain. And therefore, whatever the thing that's not working according to what I desire, I always look at it from the factual perspective of this is what I wanted to achieve, let's say this number or this result, and this didn't happen because of my hypothesis that I have these, and then let me work through those hypotheses. Excuse me. That way, I don't need to traumatize myself. I don't need to make myself feel bad, and I don't need to keep fearing this failure in the future. And there is no need for me to give up at all, right? And giving up would be essentially when we feel like giving up for me essentially means we have tried and then we didn't figure out a way to make it work. Therefore, we're no longer going to figure it out. Now, again, as I said, when it comes to going to the transitioning goals that we want to, I believe giving up on it really is dependent on you. And the more you're able to process emotions that come from transitioning, whichever the route, then there is really no need to be giving up. And I have been doing this now for 5 years, and I don't think there was ever a time in my journey where I wanted to give up. And I believe the reason why that was is because I have gotten so good at processing whatever the emotions that I had that didn't, that wasn't me, like giving up was not even an option, right? So the third problem that I would like for you to solve, and I believe this will continue happening no matter how long and how many times you transition, is the part of resistance or pressure. Resistance is essentially coming from thoughts like, this is not supposed to be happening. This is not how it should be. And whenever that thought happens in my own life, I always question, why do I expect that? Why do I expect things happening this way and not another way? Because according to my brain, I should never experience anything bad on the way to transitioning. And I believe that your brain probably might be saying the same, right? Saying things like, well, everything should sail smoothly, everything should be great, and if it's not, then something is wrong. But I think if we're going to be very realistic about things, then most of the things going wrong after transitioning probably is a safe bet to say. And I think what we end up oftentimes doing is we don't really prepare ourselves for how to deal with that resistance, right? We don't really know how to deal with that resistance of how things shouldn't have been this way, how things should have been different way, how I didn't expect this, how this was not in my plans, this was not how it's supposed to be. All of those things are just stalling points or stalling techniques to keep staying in the suffering. And the irony is that we keep telling ourselves that we don't want to suffer, yet we keep focusing so much on that resistance. And resistance for me is like putting the gas and the brake on the car and expecting it to drive, right? And obviously we will not go anywhere. So that's why the faster we recognize that things probably should never be the way that we expect to, and what if that's okay too? Right? I was experiencing so much resistance lately in my own life, especially with my mom, and then recognizing, but why am I expecting things to be different? Right? Why? Like, what on earth? Where did someone promise me things like, okay, your mom should have never gotten cancer, but no one has said that, and nor anyone has said the opposite either, right? So therefore, why is this expectation? Of course, I think we humans are all wanting things to be great and joyful and fulfilling, but I don't think that will be the case ever all the time, right? So therefore, resistance is something that keeps us in the place we don't want to because of our expectation. And the sooner we question that expectation, the sooner we accept that things didn't go according to what we thought it would go, now what are we going to do? The sooner we move on and do things differently, right? The same way that I was thinking about like today is that, okay, I wish my mom didn't have cancer. Yes, I wish my mom always recognized who I am, but she doesn't, and she's suffering a lot. And the more I keep staying in how she shouldn't, the more I keep suffering, and there's nothing I can do no matter what I say, right? Like if the morphine is not helping, then imagine me trying to do something. And that's when I realized, okay, there's nothing literally I can do to make that situation reverse. There's nothing I can do to keep why keep resisting. Like there is I think a flaw in our thinking that if we keep resisting, then somehow we will magically get what we want. But that's not true either. So therefore, what are we going to do instead? Can we accept what it is and learn the lesson and keep moving? And if so, how can we do that? And that's, I think, what solving resistance really looks like. So, Idris, I have talked about these three problems as you transition. And as I said in the beginning, you will also be facing certain set of problems if you stay in the sector. And my goal is never to advocate for you to leave the sector or stay in the sector. What I really want you to recognize is that either way you will be solving problems, and which ones are you willing to solve. And whatever you are willing to solve and you have difficulty, please come coach with me. I would love to support you in this process so that we keep going for what we want, no matter what the feelings tell us.